Today we want to talk about 3 ways that you can self-sabotage your divorce so that you can avoid those situations and have a successful divorce process. Tyler, what do you think are some ways that people out there really hurt themselves when they are thinking of divorce or going through a divorce?
You know, I think one thing that people fail to do when they are contemplating divorce is actually plan for divorce. You know, I think people get into trouble, and a lot of it's emotional. You know, you're going through things and you need a change, and so, you know, we're gonna get divorced. But, you know, the lack of planning I see is a big problem that people run into.
Yeah, and it's hard, I think, to wrap your head around how do you plan for a really negative or difficult time in your life.
Sure.
Because you might be surprised you're going through a divorce. You might be on the receiving end of somebody saying, I want a divorce. You might not be able to be that person that plans, thinks about it, processes what you want to do, because it might be a total surprise. But having a lack of plan before or during your divorce is really detrimental to the outcome. And so if you have the benefit of knowing this is the direction your family is going in, you can start preparing before you divorce. But if you're on that unfortunate other side where you might be surprised or your efforts at reconciliation have failed and you're heading for a divorce reluctantly, you can still prepare and plan during the process.
Right. I agree. You know, if you didn't plan for the divorce, but you're in the middle of one, you know, there's still a lot of planning that needs to be done. You're going to need help, you know, through an attorney, you know, and your social network. But, you know, you're right. Whether you're on the receiving end or initiating the proceedings, you know, planning is an important step in the process.
Right. And here at our firm, we support a team approach and a team to help you plan before or during your divorce usually consists of your divorce attorney, a financial planner, and perhaps if you have children, a child specialist or a custody specialist. And if you have all of those team members, you can come up with a pretty good plan to help you emotionally, help you financially, and also help you with the legal aspect of your divorce. If you are on the receiving end of a divorce, you can still build team members. You can still take a step back, process what you need, and plan for that divorce, even if you didn't initiate it. I think it's still the same approach. You know, you always have an emotional side of things. That's usually our parenting side of things. And if we can lean into mental health professionals or child specialists, that's going to help you, and if you have children, emotionally prepare and get through, or at least respond appropriately to the divorce. And if you use a financial planner, whether you have one that you've used in the past or if you feel that that person might not be on your side, you know, we often tell people we have trusted referrals that we can, you know, help you identify a financial planner to work with. Tyler, you're an accountant and you deal day to day with financial matters, and you definitely are that first person to help our clients focus on the financial side of things. But if we need to take it a step further for a tax attorney or a CPA, we also have trusted referrals that will help our clients before, during, and after the divorce. That relationship might extend beyond the divorce process to help you transition into that new phase. And so having people there to help you with the emotions, having people there to help you with the financial side of it, and having your legal team help you with all of the details, the critical thinking that needs to be applied to every financial divorce and parenting divorce. That critical thinking is really hard when you don't have a plan, or when you're emotions are clouding your ability to critically think. That's really when an attorney and a paralegal that are experienced in divorce really show you what they're worth. They can critically think through your factual circumstances, help you plan, help you develop a good divorce plan, and also negotiate in your best interests. So I think that's a really comprehensive way to plan before and during a divorce so that you're not sabotaging your divorce process.
Yeah.
I think that lack of a plan can lead into another reason that we see families or couples self-sabotaging their divorce process. And that can turn into abrupt or poor decisions. If you don't have a plan, if you're not prepared, you might make some abrupt decisions that aren't in your best interest, aren't in your children's best interest, and definitely not in the divorce process best interest.
Yeah. What are some of those?
Well, it can come down to communication. It's tough to communicate with somebody that you are separating from. It's tough to separate emotions from that. You have a loss of expectation. You have a feeling of perhaps anger, resentment, bitterness. And if you react abruptly or quickly or without thought, you might be sending an email, a text, a communication to the other party that in the moment feels the appropriate response, but you have to remember that they're not going to interpret it as an appropriate response. They're probably going to send that to their custody specialist or their attorney, and it can really affect your relationship with the other person. It can affect the divorce process as a whole. You might be disrupting your divorce negotiations all because you sent a poorly worded text or a poorly thought out email to the other side.
And we see it in cases a lot, don't we?
Absolutely. I had a case recently where the divorce was taking longer than anybody had hoped for, and there was many reasons for that. And understandably, there was a level of frustration that was reached by our client. And that client decided to send some aggressive emails criticizing the other parent's parental skills. And we were in the middle of a very important financial negotiation. And our client thought, this is different. This is a parenting issue. But what the client didn't realize was it really interrupted and affected our ability to productively negotiate his financial case. The other party decided to focus on parenting again, decided to say, whoa, I'm not sure I even want to settle parenting if this is how I'm, going to be getting messages from my co-parent. And it stalled the financial negotiations.
Yeah, and it was, if I remember correctly, it was a significant negotiation that was
absolutely.
There was a lot on the line.
There was a lot on the line, and every month that passed in that divorce meant that family was trying to maintain debt that could have been resolved in the divorce. They were getting values for assets that were aging out because of the duration of the divorce. And so emotions in a divorce process can make you feel confident in sending communications that, again, in the moment you might think is an appropriate response, but you have to remember that it's going to interrupt something. It is going to interrupt your divorce process. And that really leads to that kind of lack of planning, and it leads to not realizing that poor decisions and abrupt decisions are going to affect the overall case.
And I would just say that, to piggyback on the poor decisions and the example that you gave, and, we tell clients a lot, in clients with children and custody issues and parenting issues, is, to no matter how you're feeling about the spouse or husband or wife, father of the mother of the kids, to always be positive when speaking about them. You may not feel positive. They may be doing things that you don't think are positive, but it's important in the divorce process to be positive for the children, and for the attorneys, to not give the other side, ammunition in a proceeding to, disrupt the process. Just like in your example, it really threw a wrench in the whole proceedings and prolonged everything, and frustrations boiled up and all that, all because of poor decisions, about speaking about the co-parent. So, we always try to tell our clients to be positive, and let the process happen.
Yeah, it's really difficult during an intimate legal process such as family law to put your emotions aside. But that is where the professionals come in to help you, to remind you to not follow your emotions. It's going to lead you down the wrong path. We have to focus on what we know. And we're going to help you take the emotions out of it by focusing on facts, focusing on the process, focusing on the finances. We can't be led with emotions. We have to just focus on how can we get this done, and that comes with planning, and that comes with gathering all of your information, letting the professionals handle things that might get overwhelming to you so that you don't have these abrupt or poor decisions taking place and disrupting your process. So we do tell people, be positive. You're not going to feel positive. You're not going to feel at this moment like you like your co-parents or the other spouse, but we can't go with feelings. We can't go with emotions. We need to model good behavior. It's going to help you. It's going to help your kids. And if you do it enough, you might still be able to have those positive interactions after your divorce. Yeah. The other poor decision that we tend to see in cases, people will, besides just poor communication, they might do drastic things because they're thinking, oh, well, I'm going to have a change in my life. I'm going to change everything. And they might quit their job. They might move out of state. And that's really a big no-no if you are starting the divorce process or in the middle of a divorce process.
Yeah. And why is it a big deal?
There's a couple different reasons. One, you've got the financial side of it. In your divorce, we really have to focus on income, earning potential. We have to focus on assets and debts. And we have to focus on the children, if there are children, and what's in the best interest of the children, all while going through an incredibly stressful process. So if we just take the financial aspects of it, if somebody quits their job out of, I'm going to start anew, or just in spite of the other person, I'm going to change my life and I'm going to give up this job and I'm going to move, we've got a big problem now with income. You probably did this in bad faith, which means you weren't considering the legal proceedings. You weren't considering the effect on issues like maintenance or child support. And if you just decide unilaterally to quit your job without good cause, the judge isn't going to look kindly upon that. So now you've got issues if you just quit your job that you're probably going to be ordered at some point to find a very similar job. That's going to be hard to do if you have a history of just up and quitting your job. You're going to have problems with something called perhaps dissipation. That's when you are spending marital income or marital assets on something unrelated to the family or the marriage while there's a breakdown in your marriage. Okay? Yeah. So if you quit your job and then you perhaps move somewhere else and you're either renting or maybe you bought a condo or something somewhere else, we're now complicating your asset aspect of your divorce, because now everything you're spending on this new condo could be categorized as what's called dissipation. So everything you're spending, you might now need to add money back to the marital pot. People don't like doing that.
Right.
And you might, if you bought something, you now bought a marital asset that's going to be subject to being valued, to being, the other party being bought out. And so we're complicating many aspects of your divorce just because you decided, well, things aren't going well, I'm quitting my job and I'm moving.
Yeah.
Can't do that in the middle of the divorce. And I neglected to say, you're supposed to maintain the status quo if your divorce has already started.
Right.
So quitting your job, changing where you live, incurring debt, or buying an asset, none of that is maintaining the status quo. Now, on the custody side of things, if you quit your job and you move, say, back to family and you take the kids with you, that can also be a very big problem. Here in Illinois, if you have a case pending or if you've been through a divorce, you have to have an agreement to move beyond 25 miles of the children's essentially customary home or the marital residence. So you lack the ability to make decisions unilaterally like that if you're going through a divorce.
Yeah.
You have to talk about it with the other person, the other parent. You're now uprooting the children and putting them in different schools. All of that is problematic now for your custody situation, because in Illinois, when we're starting to work out parenting schedules, we've got to look at the distance of where, the parents live. We have to look at the children's not acceptance, but how the children are acclimated to their environment, where their extended family live. There's many environmental factors that then go into what's really going to be the children's residence, who's going to be the residential custodian of your kids. Mm-hmm. And if you have no history with living somewhere else, or you do that in violation of a law that says you can't remove the children from Illinois, or you can't remove the children from 25 miles from their home, again, a court's not going to look good at that. The other side's not going to look good at that. And it's affecting your children ultimately, because during a very stressful time, you've now moved your kids.
Yeah. And even if you're not moving out of state, I think we had a case, if I remember correctly, where a parent, I don't remember if it's our client or the other client, but a parent moved, I believe, like 26 miles, away, and was forced to relocate. People think that, oh, come on, 26, it's a mile more than, but with kids and school districts and, all the environmental factors that go in, the Illinois law says 25, and they're pretty serious about 25 miles.
Yeah, and there's a lot of debate on how to calculate that 25 miles. Is it as the bird flies? Is it, per, certain roadways? And without going into it too much, we can address that at a different podcast. Illinois is trying to clarify that so that it will be a little bit more standard. But yes, we have had cases where the children are either returned to the other parent that is in a closer area to where the children had been living for a while. The courts will make sure that the best interests of the children are met. And you deciding to quit your job and relocate affects all parts of your case, especially if you have children.
Yeah.
So making abrupt and poor decisions and then wondering why your case is lasting so long, it's because you're self-sabotaging your divorce process. Okay. And then I think the other thing that people do to self-sabotage their divorce process is failing to understand or focus on finding a beneficial compromise to all of your family issues. And when I mean a beneficial compromise, I mean you're both not getting exactly what you want, But if it's a beneficial compromise, you both see some benefits in it for either each party or the children, and they can live with it. And they can live with it for the foreseeable future. So it might not be exactly what you wanted, but it could be in the best interest of the kids. Or it might not be exactly what you wanted, but you're not going to trial and spending $50,000 on an issue you might not win. So we have to look for beneficial compromises. And if you don't focus on what is a beneficial compromise, you're self-sabotaging yourself because you're going to lose a lot of money going to trial. Or you're self-sabotaging yourself because you've decided to settle just for the sake of settling, and you settled on things that weren't going to make you happy or weren't going to make your kids happy. For instance, we had a case where the mother had gone through the process of divorce. She just wanted it to be non-confrontational and to be just done. She just wanted to be done. So she settled for 50-50 parenting time, which means the children were with her an equal amount of time that the children were with the father. She then called our office after going through the parenting plan with her on multiple occasions, explaining the ramifications of 50-50 parenting time, explaining what that effect on child support would be. She called back 3 months later to say, I only agreed to 50-50 to end the case. I think my ex is an alcoholic, and now I think that it's affecting my kids. There's no way that the kids should be with this dad. Now, if this is a new substance abuse issue, the court's going to hear that as a substantial change in circumstances. But the person actually expressed that this person's always had problematic drinking, or she viewed it as problematic drinking. And now she's having a bit of remorse over her settlement. And there really wasn't anything in the factual circumstances that showed a substantial change in circumstance. It was just, and she even admitted, I should have never agreed to 50-50. He's never parented the kids 50-50. I just wanted the divorce to end.
Yeah.
We've got a big problem to overcome. And we should have addressed that, or at least shared with your attorney before you settled the case and asked the judge to approve it, some of these issues for why it would not be in the best interest of you or the children to have a 50-50 parenting plan.
Yeah. So you can't just go back later and tell the judge that, well, I only did this because I wanted the divorce over. That's not a good idea.
Well, it's not a good idea, and it is an uphill battle that you most likely will not succeed in. And coming back to make significant changes, if it's financial and it's past 30 days past your divorce, you're pretty much stuck with it, unless there are legal issues of, fraud, or there are legal issues that you can ask to vacate a judgment. But that's also a very difficult process. But then when we're looking at the kids, it is always modifiable. But if you start to set a custom where there's liberal parenting time, the children are doing okay under the circumstances, but you believe they're not doing well, but there's not evidence to show that that schedule you agreed to is truly causing a serious endangerment to the children, or that it is a substantial change in circumstances where the judge is allowed to modify things, you're going to have to live with it.
Yeah.
So it is always better to plan your divorce process earlier than you think is probably necessary, because all of these things, emotions start playing into it. You start making decisions that are not in your best interest, or probably not in your children's best interest, and then you're hopeful to fix it later. And that is very difficult, if not impossible to do.
Yeah, and expensive.
And expensive. That goes back to that planning. Planning with team members to help you understand what you're in for, what likely outcomes can be. That's all good. But you also have to understand that you have to finance this process. And people are going to say, well, there's self-help, websites out there. There are forms that I can buy. There are courtrooms that let you come in without attorneys. And that's true. But I submit to you that it's very difficult, and it is a small percentage of couples that can use a form, go to a court without a divorce professional or an attorney, and have a successful outcome. It's a very small percentage. It's usually people that do not have complex marital estates and either don't have children, or if they have children, the marriage is so amicable that they already have a workable schedule. They've been practicing it. It makes sense to them, and they can go ahead and probably ask the judge to finalize their divorce. If you have any complexities, a larger marital estate where you own property, if you have children with any needs that should be met, whether that is even just a demanding schedule, demanding academic schedule, it could be health issues, anything, I would say those one-size-fits-all forms that you find are not going to have you successfully complete your parenting plan or your divorce. Divorce professionals really can help you critically think, can help you pull the emotions out of it, can ensure that there are details in all of your legal documents that are needed for your particular family. And you just don't find that in a general online form.
Yeah.
But planning, again, you have to finance it. So you could do this for free. It's very difficult for the reasons I expressed. The other part of planning, so that you don't self-sabotage yourself, is knowing what a realistic financial obligation the divorce process can be. And that goes back to some of our other podcasts where we discussed, the difference between a flat fee and a retainer. It's really learning that you can try to plan for your divorce by perhaps putting money aside, perhaps borrowing money from a family member if they're going to help finance your divorce, but you should always do that with a note that explains the terms of that loan and the payback terms. And then the other option is client credit, which we always talk about now. It's a new financing option that allows people to get legal services now or mediation services now that pay over time. And that's part of your planning. If you don't plan financially for it, you might get into the process with your attorney and realize, I didn't plan to pay any more money. And sometimes that hurts the process to even start and then not be able to continue with those services because, one, you either had an unrealistic idea of what it costs to accomplish your particular goals, or maybe you didn't know how to plan beforehand. So having that team, a financial planner, could probably also help you realize where you can draw funds upon or your options. But those are some tips for how to not self-sabotage your divorce process. We want to set you up for success. Right? And setting you up for success is meeting with us early to plan, or coming to our office for mediation, realizing that you need help and assistance through your divorce attorney or divorce professional to not make abrupt or poor decisions, and then also keeping an open mind, having a beneficial compromise, because you won't walk out with 100% of what you wanted, but if it's a beneficial compromise that's in your best interest and your children's best interest, that's a good settlement.
That's a good goal.
That is a good goal.
Yeah.
So 3 ways to self-sabotage your divorce is lack of planning, abrupt and poor decisions, and failing to focus on what is an appropriate and beneficial compromise. Let's avoid those things so that you have the best chance for success.
Sounds good.